Now is a great time to be a retro gamer. The internet breeds so much negativity about everything. I'm not saying things are perfect, but things are never perfect. I've been gaming since the Atari 2600, and there has never been a time better for gamers like me, who love old games and new games made in the style of old games, than right now. I want to get into all the reasons why, and let's start with accessibility. It's just so easy to access all of these games nowadays. There are about 1,000,001 options. If you own a phone or the most basic computer, you have access to the entire library of retro games. Even if you don't want to deal with emulation, there are still other ways to access most of them, either through subscription services or digital downloads. Kids today might take this for granted, but I'm 46, and I remember what it was like reading about games that I would never play in Nintendo Power, and just having my little shoebox of games with my only new experience coming from rentals. If you told me that when I was old, out of a little magic box that I could play every game ever made from my youth, I think my brain would have exploded. But here we are. Retro games are easier than ever to access. In the background, we have little Samson playing. The cartridge goes for over $2,000, but who cares? I'm playing it right now. So many people get stuck on how costly game collecting can be, and while I think that problem is a little overblown, I will save that for another video. But if you just want to play the games, everything is right there, from the common stuff that we all grew up with to the crazy systems that we only heard about in myths and magazines. We have access to all of it, and I just take so much comfort in knowing that I could revisit my childhood anytime I want at the click of a button. And it is not just my childhood I could access, but a whole host of games that existed that I just never even knew about. Thanks to the magic of emulation and translations, we have access to all sorts of games that we never got in America. My favorite game as a kid was Warsong for the Sega Genesis. I had no idea that it was actually called Langrisser in Japan, and that there was a sequel. Sure, it has been remade for modern consoles, but the original game is just amazing, and I never even knew it existed as a kid. If you go back to gaming in the 90s, there are all sorts of games that were Japan or Europe only. I don't really think that is a thing nowadays. You might get a limited physical release in one region or the other, but overwhelmingly speaking, a game could be played anywhere, but that was not always the case. Occasionally, you might see a Japanese game featured in a magazine, but then it would never make it stateside, and you'd just be left wondering what if. Or you might hear about a series, or even find a random import at your local game or rental store. It was like a whole world of buried treasures that we can only dream about, but not anymore. In this day and age, all of these games are easily accessible, with countless fan translations. An entire community is dedicated to shining a light on these once exclusive games, and I just think that is so cool. What is even cooler is that we now have access to many games that never even released. I remember as a kid reading about the California Raisins on the NES, probably in Nintendo Power or EGM or something like that. I loved Capcom, so I was really excited to play this game, but I was never able to find it as a kid. When I was 18, I got a job at Funkoland. For all of those who know, you may remember the catalog of games they had, listing all the games and their prices. I would go through this looking to complete my collection for various consoles. The catalog had the California Raisins listed, and I called all my local stores as an employee looking for it, but I could never find it. I had no idea until a couple of years later that this game just never got released, and that's why I can never find it. But you know what did get released? The completed ROM, which is what you see me playing here. You could cite tons of examples of this. It is actually mind-boggling to me that so many of these games were so far along, enough that you could actually complete them, and yet they never actually released. Not a problem for us anymore, as the internet is loaded with all of these mysterious games that never saw the light of day. You could even go on sites like AliExpress and buy a physical cartridge, which is really pretty cool, and I've done it a few times. And that's just one thing that makes me so happy to be a retro gamer today. We have access to everything. Easy access to every game I played as a kid, every game I read about as a kid, as well as access to a whole host of games that we barely even knew existed. And I just think that is so unbelievably cool. And not only do we have access to them, but we have people actively modding and changing them, thanks to the magic of ROM hacks. Here we have Castlevania The Holy Relics, a ROM hack of Castlevania, which is really an entirely new game. It has a unique story and ending, and if you did not know any better, you could easily be convinced that this is the real Castlevania 2. Everything has changed. The sprite work, the level design, bosses, and it even introduces some new gameplay elements in the form of holy relics that can be used for all sorts of different cool effects by hitting the select button. This is just wild, and if you dive into the world of ROM hacks, the cool things you could find are limitless. You have everything from difficulty rebalancing to palette swaps to entirely new experiences, taking your favorite games and making them brand new. It is actually unreal to see what people could do just by modifying the code of old games, and there are always new ones being released. Heck, I could do an entire series on just Castlevania ROM hacks alone. As if ROM hacks were not cool enough, we also have an entire universe of free fan games. I like to feature some of these on my channel, and the roster is unlimited. The fan community is not held down by copyright or licensing agreements, so they could just make all sorts of wild stuff, things that would just seem like a dream to us when we were young. The game playing in the background is Pocket Dimensional Clash 2. I featured a review of this on my channel a few months ago, but it's just such an unbelievably cool game. Besides being an absolute blast to play, it also feels like something I would have dreamt up as a teenager. The roster includes everyone from Billy Lee to Ryu to the Incredible Hulk and so much more. There is so much of this stuff out there, and it's just so much fun. We now have access to virtually unlimited games, all of which are totally free. And it's not just limited to crazy mashups like Pocket Dimensional Clash, but sometimes fans just jump out and make the games that we wish the big companies were making. I really loved Mega Man 11, but that released over 7 years ago, with no new Mega Man games since. Luckily, there's a thriving community of Mega Man fan games. This is Mega Man Rock and Roll, one of my favorite fan games, and it's just as good, if not better, than any commercially released Mega Man game. It is simply fantastic that this even exists and is such tremendously high quality. But the internet is loaded with games of the same caliber for all sorts of different franchises. You can name just about any major game you loved as a kid and find something put out by a fan somewhere. And it's not just the fans. Not only do we have access to a wealth of awesome fan projects rekindling our favorite childhood heroes, we have seen a ton of commercially released retro revivals, from major stuff like Ninja Gaiden to more obscure stuff like Shadow of the Ninja and just about everything in between. It is truly a great time to be a retro gamer. Between the retro revivals and the fan communities, we are eating better than we ever ate. And as these revivals are seeing success, they're giving birth to even more revivals. It's just an endless cycle of awesome. So we have covered a lot of ground as to why I think now is the best time to be a retro gamer. But the icing on this sundae of awesomeness comes in the way of indie games. Specifically, indie games designed to look and feel like retro games. When I say now is the best time to be a retro gamer, my favorite thing about right now are these retro-inspired indies. And they are everywhere, and my primary reason for starting a YouTube channel. You could pick any genre, any game that you used to play when you were young, and without fail, they are still being made, and 99% of the time are better than they have ever been. Game design has come so far. As a 46-year-old man, I sometimes feel like the mainstream gaming world has left me. I cannot imagine playing games online and have no desire to delve through some large open world game that is hundreds of hours long. But the indie scene is here and can scratch every single retro itch that I have. The list is endless, from awesome Metroidvanias like Axiom Verge, to incredible running guns like Blazing Chrome, awesome tactical RPGs like Fate Tactics, incredible platformers like Kaze and the Wild Mask, and games that are inspired by the classics but still feel totally fresh like Shovel Knight, to genres that feel retro but didn't really exist when we were kids like Hades. This just scratches the surface of how awesome indie gaming is. Old-timers who still love retro gaming could have everything they need from getting into indie games. Put all this together, and I don't see how anyone who loves classic gaming is unhappy about the state of the industry today. I don't feel I'm well equipped to talk about the modern AAA industry. I've never bought a microtransaction, never played a MOBA or an MMO, I don't play online, and my newest console is an original Switch. I hear a lot about the complaints of modern gaming, and I'm not here to invalidate those, only to point out that I don't care. As a gamer who loves the classics, I literally cannot ask for more because I have it all. Access to every game I could ever want to play, and a ton of new amazing entries to keep retro gaming alive. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Am I wrong? Am I right? I'd love to hear your thoughts.